Hello, dear friends. I want you to calm down and listen to this video. By the time you get to the end of this video, you will understand why you must distinguish yourself, separate yourself, disassociate yourself from anything one Nigeria. You might not want to believe me. You might not want to believe or to join or to accept the reality that you are a Biafran and that you are not needed anywhere. But for the fact that you listen to this video, I believe you will be convicted to believe that you have no choice but to look for a way out. And that way out is freedom. And that freedom is Biafra. Happy viewing.
Good afternoon, my beautiful people. How are we all doing today? I hope we are all well. Today we'll be looking at something. The topic we'll be looking at today is ethnic baiting. Ethnic baiting. How the Igbos are set up for attacks by the government and by influential people most of the times. What is ethnic baiting? Before we go further, ethnic baiting is a scenario where one ethnic group is targeted with propaganda to see if that ethnic group can become the victims of that situation. It comes up in political circumstances. One group is targeted with propaganda, other groups are instigated against one particular ethnic group to see if that ethnic group can become the victims in that situation. So that is ethnic baiting. It is something that when you find yourself, it's something you come across in multi-ethnic societies. And also in multiracial societies also, you have what you call race baiting, where, propaganda is targeted at a particular race to see if they can become the political victims of that situation. And so, ethnic baiting we'll be talking about today is something that we need to speak about because the Igbo people have or are the biggest victims of ethnic baiting in Nigeria. For one reason or the other, in the Nigerian situation, wherever there is a political tension, wherever there is a political strife, whenever there is an issue, a lot of times the Igbos are made the victims in that situation. Most of the time, the Igbos are not even directly involved or are not even the direct causes of that problem. But we find out that in Nigeria, the Igbo race is made the victim in many political situations. The essence of discussing these things is so that some of us can be aware. A lot of us are not aware of things that are happening around us. We are not conscious, and it's very unfortunate. So sometimes when we talk about these things, just so that the people who we hear will hear and learn something and become more conscious of the environment, so that they don't fall victims. You see, now the first situation we'll be looking into about how ethnic baiting has shaped the history of Nigeria and of the Igbo people. Now, the first instance we'll be looking at is the year 1966. That was just 6 years after or not up to 6 years, but almost 6 years after the independence of Nigeria. Now, there was a movement by some soldiers in Nigeria, and then Nigeria newly gained independence. The country wasn't doing too badly. The country was doing somehow fine because as of then there was still a lot of meritocracy in the government. And so when things began to become very corrupt, bigotry, nepotism started to come in, some soldiers came together from across Nigeria and said, we are going to remove the corrupt leaders, and so that they will not destroy, this new country that we have just gained, our independence as Nigeria. Let them not destroy the country. Let's eliminate these bad leaders. And so this group of soldiers came together and carried out some action. Now, the leading figure of that movement was an Igbo man. Now, after they eliminated some leaders across Nigeria and all that, initially when that was carried out, the rest of Nigerians were not too disturbed about that because they knew that truly corruption was beginning to ruin the country, the young nation. Now, something happened. There was a twist that came into that situation. The people known as the British people who handed Nigeria independence, for whatever political reasons, they came out and told Nigerians that the action that was carried out against the political leaders, the corrupt political leaders of Nigeria, it was an Igbo attempt to take over the country. And so they named the action an Igbo coup. You know, Nigerians did not call it Igbo coup. The people who called it an Igbo coup was the British people. That was what they communicated. And so that idea took root. A few months later, northern Nigeria, they pounced on the Igbo people and eliminated several people. Between the stretch of July, August, September, they eliminated close to 50,000 Igbo people for nothing. That movement by the British to call it an Igbo coup was one of the first major incidences of ethnic baiting in Nigeria. It was a major incident, if not the first major incidence of ethnic baiting. They made Igbo people the victims of that situation. That happened in 1966, and in the following year, 1967, because of that pogrom, it went on to cause the Civil War the following year, 1967, and that war ended in January 1970. So a lot came out of that situation. That ethnic baiting led to a lot. In fact, that single move of calling it an Igbo coup led to the killing of nearly 3 million Igbos. Just that single twist of calling it an Igbo coup, that is ethnic baiting. And a lot of Igbo people were lost. Now, after this history in Nigeria, because the Igbo people were later forced to join Nigeria again, you know, after this history, it's important that such things do not repeat itself. We need to be careful as Igbo people. We need to be careful the way we relate to the rest of Nigerians. I say it without fear or favor because it is the truth. A lot of times we have been victimized like that, and that was the first major incident. Now it has continued to happen because after that, the Nigerian government, they took up that ethnic baiting agenda. They took it up and started to implement it in governance. Now, a lot has happened between 1966 to now, but we'll just be looking at major instances so that our people as Igbo people can be careful. Now, recently, there was something that happened under this new government that came into power. They just came out one morning and announced the arrest of a young man that he is a notorious, in quote, notorious kidnapper in Abuja. That is northern Nigeria. Northern Nigeria, emphasis, northern Nigeria. Now, they came out and said that this young man, who happens to be an Igbo man, is a notorious kidnapper that is well known, that has kidnapped a lot of people. He is a kingpin and all that. It is not easy today to target such propaganda against the Igbo people because the government announcing that what they wanted to do was to stir up the Northerners again, just as it was in 1966. They wanted to stir up the Northerners against the Igbo people. Why did the current government do this? They did this because they are failing. The current government that just entered seat a year ago is failing and failing spectacularly. And so they need a diversion. Many of the times, the government diverts the attention of the populace to one ethnic group when they are failing. It has happened consistently. And so the current government, because they are failing, they needed a diversionary tactics. And so they brought out one young man, named him or announced his name as Chinazo Okoye on the internet, and then claimed that he is the person involved in widespread kidnapping in northern Nigeria. The government doing this was just to make sure that they can see if they can stir up the Northerners against the Igbo people by framing up a story that a major kingpin who has been kidnapping Northerners is an Igbo man. They did it to stir up sentiment, anti-Igbo sentiment. That is ethnic baiting, and it is being done by the Nigerian government. It's incredible. Brazenly. And so, because there's a lot of awareness, there's a lot of channels of communication now, many Nigerians were not actually impressed by that. They felt that, look, instead of the government to tackle the kidnapping and banditry in northern Nigeria, they decided to see if they can just frame a young man and call him Chinazu Okoye, an Igbo name, to see if they can stir up northerners. You see, because there is greater information, channels of information and communication now, it became difficult for the government to pass across that propaganda. You see, and so that propaganda couldn't take root properly. This is by the government. This is not the British anymore. This is by the Nigerian government. They were the ones who did that. They framed it up through the police, through members, the top members of Nigerian police. They framed up that story and presented. That is ethnic baiting, trying to victimize the Igbo people because there is tension in the country due to the political failure of the current government. That is ethnic baiting. It is dangerous. If that story had taken root in northern Nigeria, there will be riots against the Igbo people, the Igbo traders and business people. There would have been riot. It is dangerous. It is a ploy to set the Igbo people up for a massacre. And it was done by the leading people in the government and the leading people in the police force. That is a very current story. Very current. Just search it up. Chinazu Okoye, kidnapper, Abuja. Just type it. You see all the fabrications there. Now, this ethnic baiting also is something that is trying to take shape in the southwest of Nigeria. The current leadership of the country is looking for a scapegoat. That is one. And the frustration in southwest Nigeria is looking for a scapegoat. They are looking for something they can pounce on, and attack. Now, recently, due to the kidnapping activities in northern Nigeria and all that, some of these herdsmen went into some southwest states and some of their kings, what you call the Oba. Now, because the southwest cannot pounce on the northerners who are responsible for that. They cannot face the northerners because the northerners are people who the southwest look upon as the leaders of Nigeria, so to say. And so they couldn't direct that frustration on the northerners who were responsible for that. So what they did is that they tried to spin the narrative. They tried to twist the narrative to direct it one way or the other towards the Igbo people. They tried to steer the narrative away from the northern men, to steer it to the Igbo people. Ethnic baiting. So they started to frame stories of how the Igbos are also kidnappers, this and that, and how the Igbos may be responsible for one of those kings in southwest Nigeria. And they took this narrative and tried to spread it as far as possible. What they were trying to do is that so that the north can pick it up and the rest of Nigeria also, in the southern tribes and all that, can pick it up and turn against the Igbo group. Why the Igbo group are consistently made victims in Nigeria is due to the fact that the Igbo are very different from the rest of Nigerians. The Igbo are very different. They are people who are more forward-looking. They are more progressive. They are faster towards advancement than the rest of Nigeria. And so there's a lot of envy. There's a lot of unnecessary hatred towards them. The Igbo people are people who have continuously asked to succeed from Nigeria, to be allowed self-rule in their own space, self-determination. You see, the Igbo people have continuously asked for self-determination because they've seen that the rest of Nigeria are slow in catching up to advancement, in catching up to progress, in catching up to development. And so there is envy between the Igbo people and the rest of Nigeria. And so most of the time, the Igbos are the targets of this. This is also the reason why the current Igbo generation, the young Igbo generation across Nigeria, they have continued to tell you that you should not join in any Nigerian protest. There are a lot of protests springing up in Nigeria today because there's a lot of hunger, there's a lot of hardship. The purchasing power of the Naira is going down every day. Prices are going up. Prices are going up every morning as we speak. And so there's a lot of frustration. And so we have advised the young Igbo people across the entirety of Nigeria, do not join into this protest, this national protest. Because if Igbo youths join into the national protest, that ethnic baiting will come up definitely. The narrative will be twisted around. And then the people will turn around and say, these Igbo people who joined in the protest, they joined it so that they can destroy our communities. It is going to happen. It will definitely happen. We've seen it happen severally throughout Nigerian history. We saw it happen even during the EndSARS. They turned around to say that the people who were who were involved in the NSAS were the Igbo people so that they can destroy Lagos State. It happened right before our eyes. That is ethnic baiting, trying to make the Igbos the victims of the situation, to make sure attacks are carried out on the Igbo people. And so we will continue to speak, we will continue to educate, we will continue to re-emphasize wherever necessary, because if we keep short, things are going to go from bad to worse. But as far as people are being sensitized, being enlightened on some of these issues, we will be able to avoid trouble to a large extent. This is under clarion call for the Igbo youth of Nigeria to stay away from any protest, any national protest. Because if they join in, they will be made the victims of that protest eventually. These things are very sensitive, but somebody has to say it eventually, because the information has to get out there. The information has to get out there. It's not information somebody should know and keep to himself. You must share it with as many Igbo users as possible. We'll pick up the information. We'll know how to guide our utterances, how to guide our actions